Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another episode of Achieving Perfection. This is going to be for Return of the God Pharaoh and the Nicole Bolas node. So per the usual, I'm going to go ahead, show off the decks, I'm going to go over the node, and then I'm going to get into deck building in the event that you can't build one of the decks that I am showcasing. So for newer players, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to use Ob Nixilis Reignited for this node. And I would suggest using something like this. And then for players that have larger collections at their disposal, I would suggest using Karn for this node, and I would use this deck right here. All right, let's go over the node itself. So for the node itself, as we take a look, it actually looks kind of intimidating at first glance. So Bolas has 532 health, which is fairly substantial, and has very decent mana gains at +4 and +6 to everything. So his ability is going to be Touch of Bolas, and it reads, the last two cards in your opponent's hand are exiled. Then the last two creatures your opponent controls on the battlefield are exiled. Then your opponent takes 40 damage. Now, the really cool thing about Touch of Bolas is that Bolas can't use it unless you have a creature down. So as long as you have no creatures on the battlefield, Touch of Bolas is not going to happen. And if Touch of Bolas is happening, you're very probably going to be losing the game. It just does so much damage and gives Bolas so much control. Now, your objectives for the fight are going to be to win the fight, deal 20 or more damage in a turn, and cast 3 or more spells with the cost 12 or more. So pretty simple objectives for the most part. Now, as we take a look at the cards here that are in Bolas's deck, you're going to see a continued theme about creatures. So as we take a look at Doomfall, Hour of Devastation, Hour of Glory, Kefnit's Last Word, and Torment of Hailfire, all of them actually require a creature to be out for Bolas to use them. So Doomfall is going to exile a creature and a card from the hand, but will not cast unless a creature is out. Hour of Devastation is going to deal 12 to a creature and then 12 to the player, but it doesn't cast unless there's a creature out. Hour of Glory is going to exile a creature. Once again, it needs a creature out. Kefnit's Last Word is going to be stealing a creature, but once again, no creature, no cast. And finally, Torment of Hailfire has a bunch of different effects that are going to do damage to you, but one of the requirements is that you have some number of creatures. So you have no creatures, no problem. Torment of Hailfire does not go off. This means that between Bolas's ability, Touch of Bolas, and then all of the different spells in Bolas's deck, it's really easy to lock Bolas's hand as a full hand of 6 cards that do nothing if you just play a creatureless deck. Now, Bolas only has one creature, it's Wildfire Eternal, and that's really not a creature to be scared of, as long as you're playing creatureless, because it's a 4/8, so it's going to be hitting you for 4 a turn, which is really not very much, and then it's going to give the spells in Bolas's hand mana. But once again, as long as you lock Bolas's hand down, it's really not going to do anything. So be careful about discard. You don't want to make the Bolas discard. Now, as long as you play no creatures, really the only ways that Bolas can damage you are the Wildfire Eternal and then the periodic 12 damage from Inferno Jet. So, all in all, play creatureless, go with my recommendations for one of the 2 decks, and you'll find that you're actually going to get a perfect score on this node really easily. All right, so for the decks that I'm suggesting, the one for newer players is going to be based on Ob Nixilis. Now, Ob Nixilis' third ability, Forbidden Knowledge, is going to create a support with whenever any player draws a card, deal 8 damage to your opponent. So every time you draw a card, you're going to do 8 damage to your opponent. Furthermore, you can use Dark Pact, that first ability, to lose 1 life and draw 2 cards if you want, so just drawing more cards. Now, if you take a look at the deck that I'm suggesting, everything in the deck is gem conversion or destruction of creatures. There are a few things in here that can help you gain life, just in case you take some tick damage and you need to gain a little bit of life. But for the most part, you're really just going to be converting gems and then getting your third ability off and then whittling Bolas down by drawing cards, and that's it. So Dragon's Horde is amazing for this. It's an event reward, so hopefully you have it. It converts gems and it draws cards. Witch's Cottage is just a common that converts to black, but if you have other options, use those. Do not use Castle Locthwain. You do not want that for this node. Angrath's Rampage, Casualties of War, Remorseless Punishment, these are all going to be kill spells. If you're using Remorseless Punishment, don't actually cast it if your opponent's hand is full. And I'm saying that because this will then make it so that they discard cards, so that's bad. And then you will not necessarily have your win locked down. They might get more Inferno Jets, they might get more Wildfire Eternals. That being said, it is a spell that is 12 or more, and that is actually the most limiting factor for this node for Ob Nixilis. There aren't very many black spells that cost 12 or more that are in the common, uncommon range, and so you're probably going to have to go into your rares or mythics in order to achieve that portion of the objective. So Remorseless Punishment is in here largely for that. Now I've got Discovery in here. This is going to draw cards. It'll also get rid of the Wildfire Eternal. I've got Consecrate, so this is going to draw cards if I want to use the first ability, or if I need it to kill the Eternal, I can do that and gain some life, which is nice. Sunset Pyramid is going to draw extra cards, but Alhammarret's Archive is way better for this. So if you have that card, use that instead. It's from Origins. And Tidy Conclusion is going to destroy a creature, and then you're going to gain life equal to the amount of supports you control. So this is just another way to destroy the Wildfire Eternal and then get a little bit more life. Now, you really shouldn't need to worry about life, because as you take a look at Ob Nixilis, Ob has 119 life. So if Bolas goes through all 4 Inferno Jets in his deck, that's really just going to do 48 damage to you. And then once you take that 48 away from 119, you should still be at 81 life, right? Oh, that's embarrassing. Well, okay, whatever. But it's going to take a lot of turns of the Wildfire Eternal hitting you. So that's the moral of the story here. Oh, this is driving me crazy. So 48, 119 minus 48 is... Oh, I'm drawing a blank. 81. It is 81. Oh, well, okay. Not silly me. Woohoo! So this is the deck I would suggest for newer players. For players who have a lot of cards, like basically all of them, you're going to want to go ahead and use Karn, and you're going to want to use a Second Sun deck. So Approach of the Second Sun is amazing. You gain 7 life, your opponent takes 7 damage, and then you gain X life, and your opponent takes X damage, where X is the number of copies of this card in your graveyard multiplied by 7. So you make sure that this is the only spell in your deck in conjunction with Hazoret's Undying Fury. So that means that Hazoret's is going to be fetching 4 copies of Approach of the Second Sun and immediately casting them, which means that if you've got a way of getting Hazoret's frequently, you're just going to be doing tons upon tons of damage. Now, I know that there are 2 creatures in this deck. That is only because you'll see that Karn is not able to use 8 supports. You would need 8 supports because you absolutely do not want to put a 3rd spell in this deck. You just want the 2. So we look at the supports, and the supports are largely self-explanatory. So Omniscience is going to play everything for free. So with Karn, you're just going to want to go ahead, use that first ability to fetch into Omniscience and then play out your hand. Pyromancer's Goggles, every activation of this, once you've cast 1 Hazoret's, is just going to get you Hazoret's because it's going to weed all of the Second Suns out of your deck. So every activation is another Hazoret's, which is 4 more Second Suns. So you're going to kill Bolas in no time flat. I should also add that 1 casting of Hazoret's with the Second Sun is going to complete both objectives. So this objectively is the best. Sanguine Bond is just going to help you kill a little bit more quickly. You're going to be gaining a ton of life with the Approach of the Second Suns, and this is then going to burn Bolas for that life you gain. Alhammarret's Archive is going to help you draw more cards, but it's also going to make you gain more life, which means that the Sanguine Bond is going to do more damage. Starfield is going to get you Omniscience back, so if you haven't gotten all of your pieces, you just keep using your first, get a Starfield, get Omniscience, and Omniscience consumes itself, it comes back with Starfield, and you do terrible things. Now for the creatures, I threw in 2 creatures that have a destroy creature ability. This is just in case I need it for the Eternal, but realistically, if I'm playing one of these creatures, I'm kind of doomed. So I have them in the deck, I don't actually use them ever. You could argue that it would be better for me to actually put in Niv Mizzet and the Sphinx, that's 5 colors, just for Karn's first. And I may do that. I might try it out this event, but I've just always used these 2. And then the final card in the deck is No Mercy. No Mercy is just going to kill the Wildfire, and with Starfield just comes back. So it's just an auto kill for that card. So this deck, I've gone perfect with this deck every single running of this event. It's never failed, not a single time. It is, in my opinion, the best deck you can use for this node, hands down. Now, let's say that you can't make either of the 2 decks that I suggested. What should you do? Don't worry. You're going to want to go to your Planeswalkers, and you're going to want to check for Planeswalkers that you can use to kill your opponent without casting any creatures, and without summoning any creatures either. So there are a few good options for brand new players. You can use Chandra Roaring Flame. This is not a good option because it takes forever, like figuratively forever, to kill him, but it still works. So if this is your only choice, use it, you'll win, and you'll be fine. However, if you have other things at your disposal, Kaya is actually very good for this particular node. You just keep using that first ability, Burial Rites, to get the graveyard up, and then with gem conversion, you get Ruinous Wake, and boom, it's also going to give you a ton of life gain. So Kaya is a great option for this particular node. As you scroll through, you can actually use Rawl for this. You just get that third ability down and then cast spells. You need to cast spells for the objective anyways, and then just systematically do that 6 damage at a time. Maybe you have some spells that do burn damage because Rawl is red. And really, that's going to take you through your best case scenario options for this node. Now, let's say that you don't have access to those walkers. You're not going to have access to those walkers. What are other things you can do? So the other things you can do is just go away from your creatures, select your spells and your supports, go into your search, and go ahead and type in damage. And then once you've typed in damage, select it and go through what you have. Absolutely do not put creatures in the deck. You don't want them. So you want to find things that are going to kill your opponent. Now, you could use something like Black Vice, but if you have Black Vice, you should be able to make one of the other decks. This is a masterpiece. You can use other sort of silly things like the Ob Nixilis Vanguard. This, however, does require your opponent to draw cards, so it's not my favorite way to go. But you just go through all of your cards, find stuff that does damage to a player, use that with a Planeswalker that is able to cast that, and you will be entirely fine. So your best options for this, though, for spells, I might as well just quick scroll to the ones that I like the most. Inferno Jet is one of your best calls. I know that Bolas is using it. It's just a spell that does direct damage to the face. Molten Vortex is a great option if you have it, if you're in for the long game, because you just use red gem conversion, and then as you match the red gems, you're going to slowly ping Bolas to death. I do mean slowly. It really is slow. You've also got some of those red X spells. You'll notice that these are pretty much all red, by the way, because red does the direct damage thing. So there is Electro Dominance, which is a masterpiece. Is a mythic. I know it's hard to get. You've got Exquisite Firecraft, which isn't bad, but it's just 6 damage a turn. You've got, finally, Fevered Visions is a really cool card in that it's just going to slowly whittle your opponent down. This used to be like one of the best cards in the game. It doesn't see a lot of play now, but it definitely will work, and it's red and blue, which is nifty. And then our final really good option is 4 mana and is Banefire. So I would go with one of these, and this will absolutely get you to perfection. So go through your damage cards, pick them out, use them, or use a planeswalker that does that for you, and laugh at Bolas as he locks himself out. So I hope this helps you get perfect on this node. I hope you get perfection in the event, and I'll see you in the next one.